My neighbors called the cops on me for parking in front of my own house. They said I was too close to their car. The officer laughed. So I parked even closer, and that's when they completely lost control. If you've ever had a neighbor who thought they owned everything, the street, the sidewalk, your patience, hit subscribe right now. Like this video, drop a comment, and buckle in. Because this is one of those stories where nobody breaks the law, but someone definitely breaks. You know how most neighbor problems start small? A loud dog. A trash can in the wrong place. An awkward wave that turns into a cold stare. This wasn't that. From day one, the neighbors to my left had a vibe. Not loud, worse. Watchful. Territorial. Permanently offended. The kind of people who don't just look out their window, they monitor. They were in their early 70s, retired, nowhere to be, nothing to do, and they filled that void with one hobby: control. Control of the street. Control of parking. Control of who belonged, and who didn't. At first, we were polite. Cordial. Smiling through at neighbors. Because when you move in somewhere new, you try to keep peace, but peace only works when both sides want it. It was last summer when the mask finally slipped. We had a friend visiting, bachelor trip. One night. He parked on the public street in front of their house for about 24 hours. Not blocking anything. Not on a curb. Not illegally. And let me be crystal clear here, these neighbors had plenty of space. A massive truck. A Jeep. Room to park both. And the house next to them? Didn't even use their curb space. So this wasn't about parking. It was about ownership. And when they didn't get what they wanted, the husband decided to send a message. He stood outside. Waited until my partner was visible. And then, a grown man in his 70s, did a full, exaggerated jerking off motion toward him. Not once. Twice. Something hot and metallic settled in my chest when I heard about it. That kind of anger that doesn't explode, it pressurizes. We didn't confront him. Didn't escalate. We did the reasonable adult thing. We stopped parking there when possible. But something inside me clicked that day. That was the moment I stopped pretending these people were harmless. From that point on, there was an unspoken agreement. Fine, you want that spot so badly? Have it. We parked elsewhere when we could. Because honestly, they weren't worth the energy. But here's the thing about bullies, when you give them an inch, they start measuring miles. And they were watching. Always. Their house had cameras pointed everywhere. Every angle. Including our lawn. They were collecting evidence. Waiting. And eventually, they made their move. It was a holiday. I was off work. Asleep. Dead to the world. Then came a knock at the door. Sharp. Persistent. I rolled over and ignored it. If it's important, they'll leave a note. If it's an emergency, they'll call. They did neither. 4 hours later, my partner came home from therapy, quiet. Hesitant. Then he said it. The neighbor talked to me. My stomach tightened. He said they called the cops on us. Pause. For parking too close to their car. I stared at him. Apparently, the neighbor had told him, the officer was going to ticket you, but I stopped him. I said I'd talk to you first. Something about that felt off. Let me walk you through my brain in that moment. 1. I wasn't parked illegally. I was in front of my own house, by our apron. No driveway, but still ours. 2. I eyeballed the distance earlier, at least 2 feet between the vehicles. 3. If a cop was going to ticket me, they would have. Or left a warning. Or knocked on my door. None of that happened. So either I was secretly living in some dystopian parking zone. Or this old man was lying through his teeth. And suddenly, everything made sense. This wasn't about the car. This was a power play. I stared out the window at my car. Then at theirs. And I smiled. Because if they wanted to play games, I knew exactly which one to play. I walked outside. Got into my car. And moved it a little closer. Not touching. Not illegal. But now, 1 foot apart. Perfectly measured annoyance. As I stepped out, I closed the door slowly, turned toward their house, and threw up a casual peace sign victory hand with a relaxed hip lean. Pageantry matters. Their cameras caught all of it. Then I did something they weren't expecting. I called the non-emergency police line. Asked politely to speak to the officer who had supposedly come by. When he got on the phone and I explained the situation, he laughed. Like, genuinely laughed. Then sighed and said, "Yeah. I was never going to ticket you." He told me the neighbor had been grumpy and angry on the call, that nothing I was doing was illegal. And then, the cherry on top, they offered to do house checks for us while we're gone on our honeymoon. Because apparently, the cops know these neighbors very well. And just when I thought that would be the end of it. A few hours passed after that call. The low crunch of tires on asphalt, and the unmistakable sound of a cruiser door opening. I looked out the window. Another cop car pulled up, right in front of their house. Parked squarely in front of their house. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. These people couldn't let it go. They never could. Apparently, after I moved my car and gave them the peace sign, the neighbor called the cops again. But this time, he didn't just complain. He performed. He showed the officer the camera footage and said, with full confidence, that I had flipped him off. Not waved. Not gestured. Flipped him off. Middle finger. Threatening. Disrespectful. He wanted me painted as the aggressor. Here's the thing about liars though, they always underestimate how much other people can see. The officer watched the video, and immediately knew the difference between victory hand and middle finger. That distinction mattered more than the neighbor realized. Because once a cop smells dishonesty, everything else changes. This time, there was a knock. Firm. Professional. I opened the door. The officer was calm. Polite. Clearly tired of this situation already. He explained why he was there. I let him in. And then? I stopped playing defense. I told him everything. Not emotionally. Not dramatically. Methodically. I explained the prior incidents, the obscene gesture toward my partner, the constant surveillance, the false claim about a ticket, the pattern of intimidation. I made one thing very clear: I know you're not the problem. You're just being used as a middleman. Then I said the sentence that ended all doubt: I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm not doing anything immoral. And I'm done adjusting my life to accommodate people who treat us like this. I wasn't angry. That's what made it land. Then I brought up the neighbors on the other side. The ones on the right. Brown. Quiet. Normal people. They'd had issues too. Racially charged issues. Threats. Harassment. Enough that they had already called the police in the past. That was when the officer's expression changed. Because this wasn't a parking dispute. This was a pattern. He didn't say it outright. But he didn't need to. He said something like, "As long as you continue to park legally, you're within your rights." He paused. Then added, "Just make sure you don't cross any lines." It wasn't a warning. It was permission. Subtle. Official. Crystal clear. I agreed. Thanked him. Walked him out. And with that, the game board shifted. From that day on, I parked the same way. Every time. 1 foot from their Jeep's bumper. Perfectly legal. Perfectly measured, perfectly irritating. Right in front of my house. sometimes slightly over the apron to our non-existent driveway, still legal, just enough to remind them, you don't control this. And the best part? I stopped reacting. No waves. No expressions. No acknowledgement. Just quiet consistency. That's what really got to them. You could feel it. The tension. The helplessness. Because now every time they looked out the window, every time their cameras caught motion, it was my car. A reminder they'd lost leverage. They couldn't yell. They couldn't threaten. They couldn't escalate without consequences. All they could do was stew. And at their age? That kind of constant anger isn't harmless. High blood pressure isn't petty revenge, it's a side effect of entitlement crashing into reality. I made one decision quietly. If the cops were called again, for anything legal, I would stop opening the door. And I would file for harassment. Because by then, there would be a record. Multiple calls. Multiple officers. Multiple notes. They wouldn't be concerned neighbors. They'd be the problem. And they knew it. The calls stopped, not because they were satisfied, but because they were out of moves. The street stayed public. The law stayed on my side, and I stayed exactly where I belonged. Some people think revenge has to be loud. Well, it can be quiet. It's knowing your rights. Holding your ground. And letting someone else unravel because they can't control you anymore. We're moving in a year or two anyway. But until then, I work from home. And every morning, I park exactly 1 foot away. If you've ever dealt with a neighbor who thought they owned everything, hit like. If you've ever won by staying calm and legal, drop a comment. And if you want more stories where entitlement meets reality, subscribe now. So tell me, what's the pettiest legal revenge you've ever witnessed?
If you like stories where people finally get what they deserve, click the playlist on screen and binge the rest.